All right, Ryan, listen up. Presented by Dempsey's of Sports Land. We're back for another episode. We're going to try to recap every single UConn game this year, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Paige Bueckers' second year at UConn in stores, but we're coming on with some breaking news information regarding UConn. Sailor Poffenberger, Ryan, she announced that she is going to transfer from UConn. Not sure what school yet. Not 100% sure which school. She's again, she was going into her second. Actually, she was a redshirt freshman last year, or she transferred early, right? Because you went to school with her, and we talked about
Right.
how lucky we got to see her play at Middletown, against some of the greats that came out of Frederick County and Maryland, the state of Maryland. So again, I think that it's just it was an achievement in and of itself that she made it to Stores. She got to her dream school. You talked about it. I talked about it. It's just too much depth on the UConn roster. It would have been really tough for her to see a lot of playing time like she wants to see. I'm curious where she goes right now, because again, if I was a coach of any of these other top 25 teams, I would be on this player right away. You saw her play. I'll let you speak on your behalf. You saw her play at Middletown for what, 3-4 years, and her fourth year, of course, her senior year she left. So you saw her 3 years there, and I was lucky enough to see her when I called games with FMD, but it's just she really has. I think she has what it takes to turn any team around, and she has what it takes to take control of the game. But I don't think that she was going to see a lot of playing time, no matter freshman year or senior year at UConn.
Right. Yeah. There's just so much talent that comes out of UConn with Azzy Fudd, the freshman coming out of Virginia this season. She played 20 minutes in the season opener. There's just so much talent every single year that comes to UConn for the sole reason of them always being on top of the women's college basketball world. Yeah, you're right. It was going to be hard regardless, no matter how long she would have stayed in UConn for her to find any playing time, because there's just so much talent and there's just players constantly fighting for the starting roles and playing time on UConn. But Sailor, like we already said, she's a very good player. She has what it takes. Like you said, I watched her play in high school, and simply to put it, she was the best player on the court, in my opinion. Most of the games she played in high school, she scored so many points, not just because she didn't pass the ball. She took a lot of shots. She scored a lot of points, but her ability, her height, she got a lot of rebounds, but her ability to pass the ball to her wide open teammates is what caught my eye. She's not a ball hog at all. She can definitely pass the ball. Full court shots I saw in high school to wide open teammates down the court. So, whatever school that she decides to go to, or whatever school picks her up, I'm sure once she gets acclimated with that school and the coaches and the teammates, that she's going to flourish there. And I wish her all the best, no matter what school she goes to.
All right, so on from that news, moving on to the recap very quickly. Last night's game, Paige Bueckers dropped how many points in last night's game? It was a career high for her. Was it 34?
Yeah, 34 on 15 and 19 shooting.
34. Okay. And UConn goes on to win that game 95-80 against Michaela Daniels and company, right? That was Arkansas Razorbacks. We had Michaela on last February or March, something like that. Just talk a little bit about how hard it's going to be. I think that now that Azzy Fudd, of course, you lost. No, you didn't lose. Excuse me. Of course, Sailor's going out, but then Azzy Fudd coming in this year. Talk about a little bit about how much that she is going to play a factor in, because we saw Paige Bueckers get shut down in the playoffs last year. Yeah, this past season against Arizona when they eliminated UConn. So I think it's going to be big for Gino to have Azzy Fudd now, as I don't want to call it like a step back player. Like, you just lean on her when Paige Bueckers is getting shut down. But let's face it, Beckers she's going to be the leader of this team. I'd say it until she gets drafted, right? But how big is that now? I think it's huge to have Azzy Fudd on the roster now. We talked about her last year coming up, and I'm so excited to see her now. She made her, like you mentioned, she made her debut last night. Looked pretty good, looked pretty good. And I'm excited to see her play and what she can do now alongside Beckers.
Yeah, I mean, she played 20 minutes in her first game, so that's pretty good. Especially in March Madness, once March Madness comes around and the team starts playing multiple games a week against so many different teams that they haven't seen before, it's definitely going to be important for these role players that come off the bench when the starters are struggling to shoot a little bit, or maybe they can't play defense or shoot the ball. For these players to come off the bench and provide a boost for this team, and score some points and provide energy off the bench and get this team rolling again. And once this team goes on a run, or once any team goes on a run in basketball is a game of runs. And once a team, they can't miss or blocking shots and getting turnovers, they're hard to stop. So on both sides of the ball, and defense, I think, is going to be a key factor for this team. We know they can score. They scored 95 points. Beckers put up 34. Avina Westbrook had 15, the senior guard. Other senior guard, Kristen Williams, shot 6 of 12, had 18 points. So we know this team can score. They even shot 57% from the field, right? So we know this team can score, but they allowed 80 points. So it's going to be key for this team going through the season to see how they, acclimate to their opposing teams that they play, and see if they can get better and better each game on defense.
Yeah, I tell you what, before we head out, what we'll do is we'll go over the roster very quickly, the schedule, and then we'll go over the rankings. We'll go over the rankings each week before we head out on each episode. And again, we promise you guys, we're going to try to recap every single UConn game that there is. I can't wait, Ryan, to see and again, to see which guests we can have on. I know I kind of like to surprise you even when I try to contact some people and see. But we actually have. I know I told you he got drafted by the Braves, but we actually finally have another guest coming up here pretty soon on the show. But getting back into the UConn headlines, let's take a look at the. What do you want to start off with, the roster or the schedule?
Well, let's start off with the roster.
Okay. All right. So you have Aaliyah Edwards. She is from Ontario. You had Paige Bueckers. Of course, we know she's the Minnesota native. You have, is it Nika Mule?
Yeah, Nika Mule, I believe. Yeah.
She is a sophomore. Do you have Mir McLean? She's right down the street from us, Baltimore, Maryland, Roland Park Country School. She's a sophomore. And then Kristen Williams out of Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm not even going to try to say this next name. We'll get more accustomed to the names as we go
Yeah,
on
we'll get used to the
in the
names and
season.
we'll get them down eventually. Yeah.
Once we see them playing on ESPN, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then Olivia Nelson Ododa. She's from Georgia. And then you have Avina Westbrook. And then Pieth Gabriel, Caroline Duchamar. Are you looking at the roster?
Yeah, Caroline Ducharme,
Ducharme.
freshman.
I think it's Ducharme.
Yeah, Ducharme. Yeah.
Azzy Fudd out of Arlington, Virginia. Amari DeBerry, and then Aubrey Griffin. Head coach Gino Ariema returning. Associate head coach Chris Daly. Jamel Elliott, assistant coach. And then they added, they have Morgan Valley as an assistant coach. So with that said, Ryan, again, you talk about how they've been one of the most dominant teams the past decade in women's basketball. I don't know. Paige Bueckers stands out on this roster. I think it's going to take a little bit more time for me to see Azzy Fudd to see how she turns out. I'm curious to see Kristen Williams. I think that she may be, again, she's a senior this year. You mentioned that 5'11" guard. Let's see how Kristen Williams does, when their backs against the wall and see. I think that she might, I might be wrong, but I think she might play a little bit more of a bigger factor again, as far and Nelson Ododa. maybe it take more time. Head coach Gino might just toss Azzy Fudd in there, not give her a whole lot of playing time this year. She might not. I'm guessing she won't. But again, if she heats up, they'll want to put her in there, especially in March. But I think Nelson, these other than Bueckers, it's going to be Kristen Williams and Olivia Nelson Adota, who you want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for me, it's the three seniors, Adota, Westbrook, and Williams, that are going to carry the bulk of this team. Obviously, besides Beckers,
I was
who's
gonna say
the
other than Bueckers,
superstar.
right?
Yeah, but besides the obvious answer and
Okay.
Beckers, everybody across the whole world is going to be watching her. But the three seniors on this team have the most experience. And I think they're gonna have to lead this team a little bit, especially for the three freshmen, and just get the chemistry flowing throughout the season, keeping everybody's spirits up. Of course, I don't think they're going to have any trouble doing that, considering they'll probably might even go undefeated, maybe only lose a couple games throughout the season. So, I'm going to keep an eye on those three seniors for the Huskies.
So we have the roster, Ryan, and then I guess let's go over the schedule then, if that's fine with you. Let's go and go over the schedule. They just had their first game of the season. They're 1-0, number 2 UConn, 95-80 over Arkansas. They gave Arkansas their first loss of the um, young season. Just talk a little bit about, even though we're going over UConn. I think it's big for Amber Ramirez and Michaela Daniels. I think this is really their time to shine, because again, Amber Ramirez had 20 points in that game, and then Michaela had 5. I'm still looking at Michaela to step up more, and to mature in this league, before she potentially gets drafted. But talk a little bit about how big that was to lose Chelsea Dungy. She went to the Dallas Wings.
Yeah, and Arkansas, looking at their roster, that's the only senior that they have in Amber Ramirez. So this team is going to be back, or they're going to be here for a while. If none of their players declare for the draft. So Arkansas, I think they're going to be pretty good this year. Of course, they'll make March Madness. They always do, with Michaela Daniels, the junior. So I think that this team is going to be pretty good for the next couple of years. Got a lot of freshmen coming in this season 5. I'm counting here now. So
So you
it's
think they
gonna.
would? You think as soon as this year they'll get back to dominating and find it? Because right now they're not ranked. So you think eventually they'll be back in the top 25?
Yeah, I think they'll eventually find their way back in the top 25 as the season rolls along. But they could make a run in March Madness. Anything's possible.
Okay.
Last season they had the pretty early exit, I believe. But I think for Arkansas, they're going to be good for a while. They have five or six freshmen coming in this season, so pretty young team. Michaela Daniels, a junior, she'll be leading the team next season, I'm sure. So yeah, we'll have to watch out for Arkansas for the next couple of years.
Okay. So they're going on with the rest of the schedule. Ryan, UConn 1-0, 95-80 over Arkansas. I don't know. These games really, I mean, like you mentioned, I think that you and I talked before we got on here. I think it's safe to say I might as well buy my plane ticket and go to Vegas to start putting my bets on UConn. Because I think I have them actually run. I don't know about you. I have them running the table this year. As far as winning out, I really think that they'll go undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility considering they're in the Big East, which and men's basketball, a couple ranked teams in there. But UConn's the only ranked team in the Big East, not really a conference with a whole lot of talent besides UConn. But on their schedule, Basketball Hall of Fame showcase against 10th ranked now Louisville. They got to play 20th ranked UCLA. uh South Carolina is the biggest game on the schedule. Of course, they're
January
ranked number
27th.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, January 27th. That's going to be the one. The one game probably UConn. They're going to get tested that game, and that's going to be a really close game. I believe they lost to them last season in the regular season. So
How would you
little
like to go?
little revenge game.
I think I just might buy you tickets to that game and we can just go out there to South Carolina. How would you like that?
Yeah, that that sounds good to me. That's going to be a classic.
That is no. I mean, what more can you ask for? Number one and number two teams, but yeah. I mean, not to cut you off, but yeah, I don't really see any. You look at the obviously you look at the teams with the numbers beside of them. That's obviously the first thing that somebody would do going on the schedule when you consider what teams will give UConn trouble. But you got to always remember, Ryan, we call them upsets. It starts with a U, upsets. Um, and I just think that again, it's going to be tough. I'll take a deeper look at it as we cover UConn this year. But I just think that it's very concerning that they gave up 80 points. Again, you're nervous in the beginning of the season and stuff, but I don't know if you're head coach Gino, like it's going to be very interesting because you give up 80 points. I just think that's a little concerning right now as far as the defense of that UConn team. So we'll see. It's going to be fun, but there might be one team on this schedule that we're looking at right now. And we're like, nah, they can beat them, but they might even be unranked and they can come back and beat UConn. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, especially the teams in their conference, because even though they might not all of them are not ranked besides UConn, they're going to see each other 2 or 3 times a year. So they're going to get used to each other. They see each other 2 or 3 times a season, every single season. So,
Yeah.
they're definitely used to one another. I'm sure they don't like each other too much, seeing them so many times a season. So I'm sure every team is so hyped up playing UConn. They have a target on their back. They have for probably the last 10 years being so good. So I'm sure all those teams that play them in their conference want to try to win, even much more so than the other out of conference teams. So it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking down the schedule now. I mean, I'll go ahead and pick. I I'm glad you pointed out that January 27th matchup against South Carolina. Right now, number one, South Carolina. We don't know how it's going to turn out, how the polls will look that far away. But yeah, I don't know, man. I want to say UConn is going to go undefeated, but just that game, man. Um, it's tough. It's tough for me to call right now. I still think they can beat South Carolina. Obviously Bueckers has to be on in that game. They need her big. But yeah, other than that, I had that as the standout game on the schedule. I don't know about you if you want to tell me if you have another game, but I don't see how you could pick any other game to be honest.
Yeah, I'll go with a little underdog game. Tennessee Volunteers. They're usually
Ooh,
pretty good. The old Volunteers in women's
okay.
college basketball. They're 3-0 right now, ranked 16th.
Uh-huh.
So they could give them a little trouble. Look at their roster. Seniors Jordan Walker, the
Hmm.
guards. So I know Tennessee is usually pretty good every single season. They usually make a run in March Madness. So. I think they have 4 seniors on their roster, so they could be pretty good this season and starting off 3-0, pretty good start. So and that's late in the season too, on February 6th. So even if UConn is undefeated, they only got you know around 10 games after that. So that might be a tough one for them coming down the late stretch of the season.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad that you mentioned, and again, a rich history with Tennessee. I know that you and I have always adored that team as far as where the late Pat Summit that passed away. Talk about a legendary coach and what the
Yeah.
what she left there. And I know that you and I have always talked about actually visiting the Pat Summit statue. I would love to go to Tennessee with you and see that. Again, the address is ingrained in my mind: 1600 Philip Fulmer Way, Knoxville, Tennessee. Um, so yeah, we've always adored. I mean, this team so much. Tennessee Volunteers, so should be a good matchup. Really should.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's usually pretty good, and that would be a treat and a special place to visit someday. So we'll definitely think about that one.
Other than that, though, yeah, it's going to be hard for them. Again, you have Destiny Littleton on South Carolina, Bree Beal. You have Aliyah Boston. It's going to be, and then Olivia Thompson. It's going to be tough to Raven Johnson. It's going to be tough to contain these girls because South Carolina, they have a one heck of a team.
Yeah, they're always up there. They were tough last year. They had a really good team last year, and I'm sure they'll probably get back to the Elite Eight, Final Four this year. So it's gonna be a long, interesting season.
Lele Grissett, remember her? Grissett,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Lele Grissett for South Carolina. She's a guard for South Carolina. So yeah. Last but not least, Ryan, and then we'll go over. I guess we'll just go over. Would you want to go over the the poll, the week 2 basketball rankings before we go? Obviously, you have South Carolina. I think UConn was the only team left to not play a game until just last night. But you have South Carolina. We'll just go over the top 5: South Carolina, UConn, Maryland, Indiana, and North Carolina State. Any chance you see any one of them teams falling out of the top 5 all season long?
I mean, Indiana is kind of a new team. I haven't really seen them up there a lot, but Maryland, the Maryland Terps, I'm sure we're going to talk about them a lot,
Oh
especially
yeah.
being from Maryland. So we'll have to talk about them some as well. But starting off 3-0, they look pretty good. They were hot last season, and they lost their on their run in March Madness. But yeah, I mean, they were one of the, I think they were like the best team in all the college basketball from 3-point land last season.
Yeah,
So
and they're led by, I'm sure you remember, Chloe Bibby. She remember she I think she committed to Mississippi State, and then it was a transfer. I think kind of like Sailor, and then she went to Maryland, but they're led by Chloe Bibby, and man, she she's looking to be a top draft pick in the WNBA for sure. I bet.
oh yeah, I'm sure Maryland will have a couple top draft pick considering how good that team is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so going any chance, or you see them pretty much them top 5 staying around all year long?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the top three: South Carolina, UConn, Maryland. I think they'll be 1, 2, and 3 for probably most of the season. Louisville at number 10, and of course, like I mentioned, Tennessee at 16. They started off 3-0, so those are the teams I'll keep an eye on. Stanford, they were good last season too at number 7. Of course, they did lose a game. They lost to Texas. I remember seeing that now on my phone that they got upset by Texas last night. So
Okay. Well, that's it, Ryan. And you just very quickly before we head out. So Connecticut plays Minnesota on November the 20th, and we'll recap that one. That'll be Saturday at 12 o'clock. So we'll try to get on maybe Saturday evening and recap the Connecticut Minnesota game. But then just talk about it. I can't wait to hear what you say about this. Talk about how much that you think that's going to help Gino and company, because after that Saturday, November 20th game, they don't have another game until December 3rd at 7 o'clock, and that's against Seton Hall. So I think that's going to really, I think that might, not that they need the rest, but I think it's always good when, a young college team like this can put it all on the line. Yeah, and we're expecting them to go 2-0, obviously, into the break, the Thanksgiving break. But how big is that for them to play this Saturday coming up, but then not have another game until December?
yeah, and they had 6 games of rest after this one last night. So it's huge for a team to get that rest, and they go into December and they have a ton of games after that. Three or four in the week's time. So yeah, that's huge for this team to rest up and prepare for the rest of the season.
All right, listen up, Ryan. Presented by Dempsey's in Sportsland. I will see you on Saturday.